Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're very excited to have you join us for today's session on employee journey management. At Stridepath Consulting, we're focused on employee workflows, designing and delivering connected service experiences that meet employees where they are. After completing more than 350 ServiceNow employee experience projects, we've become a go-to HR service delivery partner, bringing together domain expertise and capabilities like EmployeeWorks AI to deliver smarter, more efficient workflows. We're a premier ServiceNow partner and certified MoveWorks partner, turning strategy into execution, helping organizations launch and scale their initiatives with confidence. Before we get started, be sure to follow Stridepath Consulting on LinkedIn to stay up to date on events, webinars, success stories, and resources. With that, I will hand it over to Scott with ServiceNow.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us. Thank you for joining us today on a webinar covering employee journey management and the power of ServiceNow to unlock a better employee experience from hire to retire. I want to let you all know, first and foremost, the slides and audio will be shared after the webinar. So feel free to sit back, relax, and take in the content. We have closed the chat, and we ask that if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A functionality of Zoom. It makes it much easier for us to get the right answers to the right questions at the right time. And if you weren't incentivized enough already, there is a raffle at the end for a pair of AirPod Pros. So if you are sticking around please make sure that you make sure you stick around so that you can have an opportunity to win those AirPods. So without further ado, let's dive right in. My name is Scott Smith. I am with our Outbound product management team for ServiceNow, focusing on our HR service delivery and employee experience products. I'm joined by a colleague of mine, Quentin.
Thank you, Scott. So my name is Quentin Mackey. I'm in the product excellence team here at ServiceNow, and my focus is on HRSD. And like Scott said, we work closely together to make sure customers get the best out of the solution and get a return on their investment. Will?
Thanks, Quentin. Really appreciate you guys making the time to speak with us today. Will Finnegan, I'm a managing partner and I lead our customer success team at Stridepath Consulting. I've been focused on employee workflows, the HR scoped application for, the better part of the last 8.5 years. So really excited to bring some of that experience to bear and talk about how we can really take a look at journey management today.
Excellent. Yep, brought the dream team here with Will and Quentin. So I'll start us off and try not to screw things up. Wanted to just kind of give you all an overview of what employee journey management means here at ServiceNow. So fundamentally, employee journey management is a collection of applications within the ServiceNow tech stack that come together to drive really meaningful experiences for the moments that matter for employees, whether it is onboarding, offboarding, leaves of absence, transitions, relocations. Essentially, it is a unified cross-departmental workflow engine that is designed to meet employees, managers, and HR teams where they are in the process to make it simple, easy, and streamlined. Within employee journey management, there's 3 core applications and experiences. First is Journey Designer. That is the UI layer, so to speak, for all of the underlying workflows. This is where employees and teams will experience journeys within the employee center experience as part of ServiceNow. And then within that, there's kind of 2 workflow engines. The first really focusing on those enterprise-wide tasks, and that's powered by our lifecycle events engine. And so this manages all the things that are happening to get this person in the door or out the door within the business. So the HR document, HR data, the legal documents, the IT asset and software asset provisioning, so on and so forth, connecting all of those disparate activities from different parts of the organization into logical deterministic workflows. And then alongside of this is what we call team tasks powered by Journey Accelerator. So these are the things that are unique to individual teams. Someone is joining the design or part of the organization, or the sales part of the organization, or the engineering part of the organization. And a manager wants to be able to augment that broader cross-departmental enterprise-wide journey for the nuances and the specifics of their team. We'll get into those details in a little bit more later, but hopefully kind of paints a picture of how all of these come together. And then, as I said, we're trying to drive multiple different types of outcomes: onboarding, leaves, some global mobility, promotions, transfer, offboarding. A lot of folks, when they first start with employee journey management, they almost call it the onboarding engine or the onboarding solution. That is one use case of many that employee journey management can solve. So these products have evolved over time. Um, so back in 2017 is actually when we first released lifecycle events for those cross-departmental activities. And that's where a lot of our customers today have started and have built really strong workflows to manage these types of activities. In 2021, we layered on Journey Accelerator for those team-specific tasks. A couple years later, we added Journey Designer to unify that experience and bring everything into our Employee Center Pro product. And then over the last few years, we've really been kind of ramping up our ability to add agentic and AI features layered on top of it, whether it is helping managers build ramp up plans, summarizations of those, as well as continuing to kind of more non-AI features like a pre-hire experience within journeys, offboarding knowledge transfer as an agentic experience. So just wanted to pull this up to show that while some of these products came into market almost a decade ago, we continue to invest in this because we know it's an area of importance, not just for our customers, but for the employees that are going through these journeys as well. And as I said earlier, there's really a couple types of journeys. The journey designer overlays on top of these existing workflows that you might have. So a lot of our existing customer base haven't yet migrated over to Journey Designer, and that's perfectly fine. The good news is those same lifecycle event workflows that you have already taken the time to build simply plug directly into that Journey Designer experience. So no rebuilding, no rework. Essentially just a new experience, a better experience for those employees as they go through it. And we're really focused on the personas that are each a critical aspect of any employee journey. So from an employee standpoint, we want it to be a seamless experience as they navigate this. Whether it's onboarding, offboarding, leaves, these are big critical moments that matter for these employees, and they're complex and impactful. So we wanted to make it as seamless and personalized as possible so that they feel welcomed or have a solid goodbye when they're leaving or joining an organization. But we also want managers to feel empowered to drive that employee success during these moments that matter. So whether it is just getting a purview or insight into what's going on when someone is going through a journey on their team, all the way through being able to augment or tweak it as well. We want to empower managers to have a seat at the table with these. But of course, agents and fulfillers and the HR operations side of the house wants to make sure that these things are running smoothly. They want to make sure that if things are, if there's bottlenecks or any issues, that those are quickly flagged and remediated, as well as being able to get purview into what's going on across these different journeys so that they can keep track of what's going on. And then for our administrators or our sysadmins, really making sure that these are easy turnkey experiences to turn on, configure, and then deploy quickly within their organization. So that's a little bit of a preface and a amuse-bouche, if you will, for the employee journey management. Now I'll pass it over to Quentin to kind of get into a little bit more detail about the details of employee journey management. Quentin?
Thank you, Scott. So we're going to talk about like where most customers start. So let me start with something that's true, right? For most organizations we work with, you went live with onboarding. Maybe it took longer than you expected. Maybe the cross-departmental coordination was harder than the product demo suggested, but you got there, and that's real. So that's a really good accomplishment. Onboarding is a high volume, high visibility, and getting it right takes genuine effort. But here's the thing. Onboarding is just one moment in an employee journey with your organization, just like what Scott says. And that's usually where customers bias and usually where they start. And the moments that come after that, like transfers, promotions, leave of absence, offboarding, are often managed the same way they were before employee journey management existed. So you're using email chains, manual checklists, HR teams chasing IT for access updates, employees who go on parental leave and come back, they have a broken experience, right, from that aspect. Departing employees who take institutional knowledge with them because there's no structured knowledge transfer in the offboarding workflow. The cost of this is real. Every day a new hire isn't fully productive is lost business impact. Every leave of absence that's managed inconsistently, it could be a compliance risk and an employee experience failure. Every onboarding that you rush through, you let institutional knowledge walk right out the door. So one of our customers we worked with, like City of Raleigh, they saw a 66% faster onboarding after getting their employee journey management foundation in place. Alara Caring, another customer we work with, went from weeks to single day onboarding to a rate of 1,400 new hires per month. So that's what's possible when journeys are orchestrated instead of just coordinated and done the right way. Today is about closing that gap between the employee journey management is doing for you today and what you could be using it going forward. So how, next slide for me, please. There you go. So how employee journeys are built. Before we talk about what to build next, I want to make sure you're aligned on the employee journey management structure that what Scott talked about, because this is the thing that either accelerates your expansion or creates unnecessary friction and tech debt. Here's the reality. Most customers discover somewhere in their deployment the cross-functional workforce you already have, IT provisioning, HR documentation, workplace access. Those aren't separate from employee journey management. They're the building blocks that you already have, and you could leverage them in that journey, lifecycle events, and the engine underneath. It's what detects that the new hire is created or that transfer is approved, and it kicks off a coordinated workflow across these departments for you. If you live in HRSD today, Lifecycle Events is already running. Your IT provisioning process workflow is a separate system you just need to reconnect to. So it's already wired in. So you're just all bringing it together. This matters because one of the most common things we hear from customers who have expanded beyond onboarding is we don't have the bandwidth to build another journey from scratch. And the answer is you're not building from scratch. You're building on top of the foundation you already have. So you're just bringing it together and orchestrating that experience. Journey Accelerator extends that foundation to the manager layer. So letting managers and functional leaders build team plans and personalize the experience without creating work for HR admins. Journey Designer sits on top as the single configuration layer where everything is managed. The analogy I like to use is the lifecycle event engine. Lifecycle event is the engine. The designer is the dashboard, and you don't replace the engine when you add a dashboard. You just keep building on top of it. So one of our customers, big bank, they unlocked over 104,000 productivity hours annually by letting the platform orchestrate what HR teams were previously managing manually. So that's the compounding effect of getting the architecture right. So once you get the foundation right, you can build right on top of that. Next slide for me. So the journey designer, one of the things that slows most customers down when they think about expanding is misconception about the journey designer. So I want to address that directly with you. So the journey designer is not a replacement of lifecycle events. It doesn't touch the workflow logic you've already built. What it does is it gives you a single unified place to configure and manage your journeys. What employees see, what tasks get assigned to them, which stakeholders are notified and which steps. It's the front door if you look at it from that aspect. The engine underneath stays exactly the same. Think about what this means practically. When your new hire starts their onboarding journey, lifecycle events is doing the work, triggering IT provisioning, routing HR documents, coordinating workplace access. Journey Designer is what makes that visible and manageable. It's what lets an admin see all the active journeys in one view identify where things are stuck, and fix it without involving multiple teams. The other thing worth naming here is the access model. Process owners, managers can be given ownership at specific sessions of the journey without needing full admin access. So your IT team manages the IT tasks, your facility team manages workplace access. HR doesn't have to be the single point of control, and that's important for scalability as you expand to more journey types. This is why organizations that understand this architecture expand faster. They're not rebuilding, they're reconfiguring. So one of our customers reduced their HR staff workload just by 40 hours per month, not by adding headcount, but letting the platform handle what HR was doing manually. So out of the box, and Scott alluded to this, we have three ready-to-use journeys that you can install, clone, and customize today. So we already talked about onboarding. Another big one I see a lot of customers are asking for is leave of absence. Now we also have offboarding. These are, like I said, already out of the box. We provided these to you as templates and examples that you can take into your organization, clone them, and make them yours.
Perfect.
Also,
Thanks,
this,
Quentin.
Will, let me turn it over to you. Sorry.
No, perfect. No, and I mean, I think there was some very powerful stuff that you had mentioned, Quentin. And when we think about what being ready actually means, so I'm going to pull on a couple of the threads that you mentioned. So being ready means that we know what we're trying to accomplish, right? So in the case of onboarding, we know we want to get to day one readiness. We know that we want our new joiners to really be productive as quickly as possible to make sure that we have handled as many of those tasks as we can ahead of time, right? So when we think of these outcomes, we want to define what success looks like. We want to understand what impacts we're trying to be able to make. And then we also want to make sure that they are measurable. Um, and as we, really start to prepare for this, I think those outcomes are driven based on all of the preparedness that we've done to this point. So making sure that we have content ready for HR. It's usually a lot of the policies that our new joiners are going to be reviewing to make sure that they're signing off on them. Same thing from our IT counterparts. We know that there are policies around AI and software usage that we're going to have to take a look at. And then from excuse me, groups like facilities, we know that there are going to be tasks like uploading a picture so that we can get our badges created. And all of that readiness, all of that content, all of that process alignment, make sure that this isn't just happening in a silo, right? Every one of these life cycle events touches more than one department, touches more than one group or center of excellence in our platform. So we want to make sure that as we're doing this, we're not doing the alignment of process in a silo. We want to make sure that we have those right teams at the table talking about the various pieces that we want to, again, orchestrate and get away from manual process or living in Excel or in email. We want to make sure that we have that foundationally set up in the platform. So leveraging again that baseline that Quentin and Scott both mentioned of we may have things already created in our IT catalog or in our facilities catalog. Let's bring those over. We may already have content created. So those policies that I mentioned or those how-to guides already in our knowledge base. So having all of those things ready allows us to accelerate that time to value. And then also knowing where's our data, right? Because when we start thinking about longer term on how we're going to orchestrate more than one life cycle event, data is going to be king for us, and understanding where data is coming from and when it has to flow to trigger some of our events is paramount to our success. So all of this is great. All of this helps us be prepared, but we're still going to occasionally trip up. Samer, that's your cue. Thanks. So what are some of the common first journey pitfalls that we run into, right? And I think, the easiest one to think of this is an HR only process, which it's not, right? And this isn't just for onboarding. When we think of things like offboarding or leave of absence or mobility, whether it is transferring teams or going for some of our larger partners, global mobility and, involving transferring from one location to another. Those are um, areas where we find slippages. And I mentioned data is king, understanding integrations, understanding that sometimes integrations just work and it's as easy as plugging in a user and password and magically we get the data. And then other times we're building something from scratch. So discounting some of those subsequent technologies that we're going to need also adds complexity. Um, I also called out content and ignoring that content, ignoring who owns that content, also can have impacts in our journeys because we want to make sure that we're serving up the most current, most up-to-date process and making sure that our team members feel that. I think the other big one, and this is something that I've seen in a multitude of our customers, is that we take a simple process and then we add to it and we over engineer it and we say, hey, all this automation is great, but let's keep automating it when we should have said, you know what, that is a good enough release for this go around. Let's think about how we start to add things to a backlog. And that leads me to the last point on there is that there isn't a governance model, right? This isn't our easy bake oven, my favorite analogy. We can't set it and forget it. This platform is really meant to be um, something that's monitored, that's maintained, that is expanded upon, right? So when we look at expectations versus reality, um, really we want to make sure that we know that we're going to need partners outside of HR, from IT, from facilities, from some of the other groups that may be involved in the journey itself. Um, that even though we think that this is going to be quick and easy, that there are times that we need to find and plan for complexities as it relates to the critical path and the longest tent pole for us to make sure that we're managing to from our timeline. Um, and that, again, I do it once and it's going to work forever. And that's not always the case. And that's, I think, the power of the journey engine. So when we start looking at how do we expand, um, I know Quentin, you had some great thoughts on how to start thinking about what to choose next.
Yeah, and it's like super simple, right? And to your point, you don't need to over-engineer this, right? And so when I talk to customers, I just ask them like three questions, right? A very practical filter, like from a perspective of does it involve multiple departments or stakeholders to deliver this experience? Is it handled inconsistently today, right? Either through email or just institutional knowledge. And then the last question I always ask them is, does it have a meaningful employee experience impact? And if the answer to any of these is yes, then there you go, right? You have your next one that you want to focus on, right? Obviously, if you have one that has all three yes, that's probably your top priority from that perspective. And so you don't have to over-engineer this, you don't have to overthink this. And also to add to Will's point is, so, you're already doing this. Some of the stuff is already there, and do not let perfection be the enemy of good, right? Let's get it configured, get it out there, and then start to learn. This is a journey, not just a not just a project where I get it in and I stop. You just have to continue working on it, and then as things change, you get it better and better. But don't spend a lot of time trying to over-engineer it. Just get it out there based on the experience that you have today. And so remember, the goal is that you want to orchestrate versus end up doing a bunch of coordination.
Yeah. Just build on that, Quentin. I think, one of the things that we advise our customers on is as we're looking at these journeys and going beyond onboarding and, excuse me, looking at those processes, we want to find and identify ones that are manual, that are fragmented, that have that disparate experience like you were describing, because we don't want some of it to be handled digitally and then some of it be handled in a paper form. We don't want to have to wait necessarily for our new joiners to be there on day one. We want to make sure that we are finding ways to engage with them, finding ways to bring culture to them such that they are providing value quickly. So all of these high volume transactions that we have listed out on the right-hand side and we've started to talk about, I think what really helps identify those and really find the value for our customers is that they are measurable. They have clear KPIs that we're going to be tracking against. They are cross-functional workflows that are touching more than one department. And they're important to our team members across their journey as part of being one of our employee, right? So don't let the thought of saying, I can only bookend this, or I can take a combination of onboarding and offboarding to build leave of absence. Like there is more that we can do with these. So, when we think about scaling journeys, right? Building new, building and reusing components that are already there, those tasks, those flows, that integrations. We want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that we're doing it intelligently, right? So when I say intelligently, I look at from the land of having been an ex integration and data person. I always try to think about how I'm going to take each of my excuse me, each of my components that I've built and think of them almost like a Lego brick, such that I can snap them in very easily, right? So all of those components, like Quentin mentioned, exist and we can draw on them. But I think, again, even though we have those components, we want to take a look at them. We want to make sure that they are built for the future. And we want to make sure that we're putting in areas to get feedback, right? So leveraging surveys, making sure that we're giving the people that are monitoring the process the analytics to help make informed decisions. So again, measurement, understanding some of the goals and the time horizons that we're working towards are really important for us for this first journey, as well as those that are going forward. Then I think the other big thing is making sure that we have governance and ownership defined, right? So making sure that, again, all of the parties that were involved in that workflow have a seat at the table when it comes to not only maintenance, but expansion. I think of one of my customers right now that is an international education company that we've been working with them on onboarding for a while. And what we found was that when we started with the look of a holistic journey, saying we're going to do onboarding for the entirety of their employee population, the only reason that we were able to say we can do this with a single lifecycle event is because of that journey technology, the ability for regions to control some of the nuances to their specific onboarding process. And not only those regions, but then again, also down at that specific manager or team level. The journey, the power of journey is the ability for us to create without having to involve the administrators of the platform. So really powerful for us and really important for us as we continue to expand on the platform. And I think as we continue to expand on the platform, it takes a change in our thought process and our approach. We really want to get out of the idea that this is just a single project where we're doing a single deployment or we're only tackling one task through a big bang effect. Really, we want to start getting into more of that product mindset where we are not only doing an initial release, but then we have subsequent releases that are adding or modifying functionality or removing steps that may not need to be there as well. That we have a backlog of these improvements that we're looking to make systemically across each of the journeys that we have deployed. And that, again, we're not just turning them on and hoping that in 3 years they're still going to be functioning the way that we intended. We want to make sure that we're optimizing them for the future. So again, it's taking us from that mindset of I'm going to do this once, I'm going to try to get it perfect, and then I'm going to leave it alone, to I know that there are going to be changes that happen, especially in the world that we live in the constant state of change that we have around us. So a really, I think, great story to talk about this and how we've helped one of our customers. I think of American Red Cross, because when we started with them, they were very low tech in their processes. They were very manual. They were living in spreadsheets. They were living in emails. They were living in Post-it notes, right? And it's very hard to manage a process when you have one person running around with a sticky on their finger and saying, did I do this step? Did I get this approval? And then having to know where that is. So it was awesome to help them on their journey. When we helped them on this maturity scale, we got them from that very manual process into initially a state of self-help. So our first release with Red Cross was uh, primarily focused around case and knowledge management, getting there. At that time, Employee Service Center, now Employee Center, stood up. So it was a great foundation for us to continue to build on. So later on in the 2020 year, we helped them not only release onboarding, but also at that point in the world, we were going through COVID, which feels like so long ago, but also feels like yesterday. But it was really cool to see what we stood up for them pretty quickly and continued to build on that foundation that we started with. So as we were, again, helping them up the maturity curve and getting into more of the strategic HR services, we helped them with their next journey, which was getting into the offboarding space. So managing now both sides of their team member experience, and then also doing robotic process automation. So think of some of those very repeatable tasks that we could automate, like printing a new hire's ID badge, huge as part of continuing to expand our onboarding journey. So we worked with them across that and continue to work across some of those services to further improve their journeys from 2022 through 2024. And we're in a point right now where we're in more of that continuous development space. So we're working with American Red Cross on continuing to enhance the product, continuing to work through backlog items that are affecting those original HR services, as well as maintenance on their existing journeys, and helping them be prepared for what's next, what's now. Now Assist, MoveWorks, getting them ready for AI, because that's where this is all going. As we think about how we're going to layer in both agentic and generative AI, all of this is important, making sure we have that solid foundation from way back, standing up just case and knowledge management. It's imperative for us to be able to continue on our journey to leverage the new technology and continue to meet our team members where they are. So what does success look like for us, right? As we think about all of these journeys, all of these great tools that are at our fingertips that we can start to leverage, we want to make sure that we're looking at it not just from the standpoint of checking technology boxes and optimized workflows, but also from the experience. We want to make sure that we are being very mindful of the audiences that Scott mentioned at the beginning, right? So are our team members, are they using a laptop or a desktop to be able to interact with the experience, or are they going to be more of an hourly based style employee that's going to probably be doing it right from their mobile device? How do we make sure that we are finding ways to gain efficiencies in that workflow, to reduce the time on our onboarding coordinators to make their lives easier, as well as our friends over in facilities and IT? How do we make sure that we're preparing this for what's coming next? The enhanced experiences with AI, the new interfaces that are going to be coming in the subsequent releases from ServiceNow. Still in my head, I had to come up with a name for Australia that had two A's in it. So Australia forever will live as aardvark for me, because it's the only double word that I know. I'm working on B right now. Quentin appreciates my double letter words, so I'm working on that new one. But there's a lot coming this year, and we're going to hear more about it next week at Knowledge. And all of this to say that we're working to get this technology easier to deploy. We're deploying now in months and not years, and soon it's going to be weeks and not months. We're building things that are reusable across all of these journeys and as standalone components as well. And we're doing it with that eye for the future in mind. Um, so Quentin, I know I just dropped a lot of knowledge. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that, or Scott as well? Anything that you guys wanted to add to the experience of deploying journeys and what success looks like?
Oh no, that was a lot of good stuff. I would say the only thing I would add to that, and like I'm kind of kicking myself, I know I didn't call it out earlier, is just the OCM aspect of it as well, right? From an organizational change management perspective. And you made the point. I guess what triggered it for me is you made the point earlier, right? Like these may start in HR, but these are not HR projects. These are organization projects, right? And I work with customers, and that's one thing that we tend to overlook. It's just the organizational change management aspect of it, and it's really truly important for the success of these journeys as well as the adoption.
Great call outs, Quentin. So when we think about next steps and, how do we make sure that we're ready to get more from journey management and the investment that we made in the platform and some of this pre-work, um, you know, simply talk to your account team, reach out, ask questions. We're happy to set up demonstrations of the out-of-the-box workflows and talk to you about some of the customer examples that we have, as well as getting into some of those very defined outcomes that we helped bring to bear as we looked at this. Um, you have internally, you have development instances or even personal developer instances that you can go and play around in. Truly treat it like a sandbox and see what the workflows look like. They're designed to be cloned and customized, like Quentin said. It's fastest way to get your fingers on it and see what it can do. And then think about what that journey could look like. So that recurring moment that is still very manual that you would love to see automated. And, again, they don't have to be as big as offboarding or onboarding. They could be smaller steps of it that, again, is fragmented that we just want to start thinking about very component wise to build that journey. It's the best candidates for it, and you already have the foundation in that thought process. So
Yeah, the only thing I would add on to that is, and I know this was covered, but worth repeating is since it's all part of the same platform, that's the beauty of it, is like the IT at the order guides, the catalog guides your IT team has already built. The HR cases that are underpinning a lot of HR case and knowledge management, the other parts of the organization that are leveraging ServiceNow, those are all the building blocks. When you are designing a lifecycle event workflow, you're literally just saying, hey, call that existing IT order guide for new hires and build it into this part of this workflow. So it's when I talk with HR leaders, part of the conversation is how do we get everyone on the same page? And part of getting everyone on the same page is going to your IT counterparts and other parts of the organization and say, the work you've already done, it's not wasted work. If anything, we are leveraging that and making it a more streamlined and better experience. So it's better for the employees and it's better for the HR and the IT teams as well. So worth just kind of reminding yourself it's almost like Lego blocks that build on top of each other and they're not necessarily anything net new. And it's a really great way to start fostering that conversation with the other parts of the business that are all part of these cross-departmental workflows.
I think we're opening it up for any questions that the team has at this point. I think our first one came in from Natalie. How complex is the leave management side of employee journeys? So, Natalie, maybe you can help me with a little bit more detail on that, because when I think of leave management, oh man, thank you. Perfect. Yes, it covers all of them. And sometimes when we think of those different flavors of leaves, gosh, I'm going to be an analogy king today. I think of the components as Legos, and then I think of um, all the various flavors of journeys as different ice cream flavors, which makes me think that I need to think about lunch soon. So yes, leave management covers every single one of those different journey types. So whether it's short-term, long-term disability, whether we're getting into some of the specifics around FMLA or military, or even as short as for having to go to jury duty. We can configure the leave process in any number of those flavors. And then when we start thinking of the journeys, that's where we start adding the accoutrements, the sprinkles, the whipped cream, right? Because some of them we know are going to have different steps that we're going to configure based on the location of the employee taking the leave, or the type of employee taking the leave. So absolutely can configure to all of those different flavors.
And I would just echo, there's a reason why parental leave of absence is one of the out of the box demo data workflows that we have. So while military leave or these intermittent leaves are different, the nice thing is the parental leave kind of gives you, again, a foundation to start thinking about this. And at the same time, this is a workflow engine. So if, oftentimes what I find and Will and Stridepath are really good about getting folks in the either in the literal room or the virtual room and saying, what are all the steps that someone needs to go through for military leave or intermittent leave? Let's just put them on sticky notes, put them up on the wall. And then once you have the process orchestrated, it's actually fairly easy to then implement it into the product. So that would be, and Will, I'd love your perspective on this. I actually find the kind of workflow diagramming of it is actually harder than the actual implementation of the product itself, because once you have it's getting everyone on the same page and your ducks in a row, and then it's just taking that and saying go build those forms within ServiceNow, or go build that catalog item within ServiceNow, so on and so forth. But Will, I don't know what your perspective on that is.
No, I think you're right on, Scott. And when I think about the design state of it, that's usually the largest lift, is making sure that we've identified those steps, that we have the correct forms for each of the steps in the process. When I think of some of our customers that live in the medical space, and we start talking about atomizing their new joiners into clinicians versus back office employees, there's a lot that goes into that as well. And knowing the different touch points for each of those audiences, because they may have different time systems, they may have different pay systems. So again, knowing where all of those hooks are is usually the hardest part of this. The technology is great. We can make ServiceNow do darn near anything. But when I think about those pitfalls that I come back to, it's making sure again that we have the right voices and that we um, know all of the steps in the process. Perfect. Thanks, Natalie. So John's question, what suggestions might you have for capturing baselines to compare against post-implementation and evolution over time? Are there specific metrics? How do I find benchmark data, etc.? So oh man, another great question, John. So Scott, would love for you to weigh in on this and pile in, throw an elbow every once in a while to tell me to stop talking. But where do we get these metrics, especially when we're coming from a very manual process? Um, Even if we're working out of email and spreadsheets, there are going to be some form of timestamps for us in those communications that will be able to give us at least some of the baselines for durations, right? So how quick am I able to get somebody a laptop? How quick am I able to get them access to all of the systems that they need? How quick am I going to make sure they have a laptop, right? So those are some. And then I think the other big one is leveraging the technology to get real-time feedback through parts of the process. So doing some of those pulse surveys to say like, hey, now you're on day one. Did you talk to your manager? Do you feel like at the end of week one that you have the appropriate access, the appropriate hardware, that you've accomplished some of those baseline steps. So I think the system itself will not really lend to giving us a lot of these analytics. And the first 60 to 90 days are really where you're going to see those changes starting to come through. But Scott and Quentin,
Yeah.
would love for you to
Yeah, no,
pile on.
I would add to that, right? I mean, it's like, some to be really realistic, sometimes you don't have any benchmarks, right?
Yep.
Like, to Will's point, you've been working these in mailboxes or manually, right? From a perspective of word of mouth and so forth. And sometimes you don't even have a baseline or a metric. And so you can look at it in another light in the sense is we want to orchestrate this to get a benchmark and a baseline as
Mhm.
well, right? And so this could be your starting point to actually get a benchmark and baseline. And so I've worked with customers who they didn't know, hey, we've been doing mailboxes. I don't know, takes 10 days, takes 5 days, depends on a lot of different things, right? And when
Mhm.
we implemented it, we were able now to get a baseline and benchmark for them. And what that helped us to help them with is now we get to prioritize, right? Okay, here is actually your baseline. Where do we want to go next, right? What are the buttons we need to push first? What do you want to get faster? Do you want to get the provisioning faster for laptops, or you more concerned on something else, right, that we need to focus on? And so John, to your point, sometimes you don't have a baseline, and this actually helps you get one, right? And sometimes maybe the main priority for you doing this lifecycle event, be it onboarding, leave of absence, is to actually get that baseline and benchmark to orchestrate and get a better experience and then move on from there.
Yeah, I think both of Will and Quentin touch on it. Just to be super specific, it's not rocket science. Employee satisfaction is a great metric to start monitoring
Mhm.
right away. Like most organizations have some sort of, pre-hire survey, even if you're not using a tool like or a system like ServiceNow. Like, what is your baseline of like how employees are feeling ready for work? How are managers feeling that their employees that they just hired are ready to work? And then simply continuing to pulse survey those type sorts of folks for things like not only employee satisfaction, but also time to productivity. That's a really great question. A lot of organizations are asking their managers is like, hey, you hired Scott. Was he ready to start doing work within the first couple weeks, or did it take, 90 days because his laptop actually didn't come for the first week, and he also was hunting down system access for the better part of the month for all the things that he needs to get access to. So, and then for our HR operations folks, it's, number of case escalations that you see for onboarding, number of new hires that started on their start date, for example. So again, there's lots of publicly available metrics, but also some of it is just kind of knowing what matters for your organization. Is it more about the experience? Is it more about the operational side? And then reverse engineering the metrics from there.
Gonna jump
I,
down to the, oh, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was going to add the next question around the pre-hire experience. It's a great question. So
Mhm.
um, that was new in our Zurich release last fall. Essentially, what it does is it extends Employee Center Pro into that pre-hire space. So when we talk to a lot of customers, that's a really weird area because they've been hired. They've maybe signed their offer letter, but there's still some risk associated with it. Maybe they don't pass a background check, a drug screen, maybe something falls through. So you don't necessarily want to give them, full carte blanche access to your systems and tables. This pre-hire experience is designed specifically for that kind of gray area. What it is at its core is it leverages the dynamic nature of Employee Center Pro based off of the rules, or excuse me, the roles an employee or has. So we created a new role called a pre-hire role, comes out of the box delivered with Journey Designer. And essentially what it says is like, hey, Scott has this role for pre-hire. We're going to give him a very truncated version of Employee Center. Just, the tasks he needs to do, some knowledge articles, maybe if there's a widget around like, who's my hiring manager, our onboarding specialist, who to reach out to, and then maybe some campaign content to push, welcome information, company news, all that sort of orientation type of things. But fundamentally, it's not a necessarily net new experience. It's just leveraging what ServiceNow is really good at, role-based security, and then creating a new role defined specifically for this pre-hire. I would say this is an area that we've seen a lot of interest
Mhm.
in from our customer base because it is that odd gray area that a lot of HCMs aren't built to manage, and it's an area that they look to ServiceNow to support them.
Right. I would also add to that is though since the release, 'cause a lot of customers were trying to do it like from customization and outside of ServiceNow, I would say I've seen this really reduce a lot of technical debt, right, from that aspect since we provided out of the box. And then to Scott's point, you're still on one platform, right? And so there's a lot of statistics and metrics that you can capture during the pre-hire experience as well.
No, absolutely. And I love that the expansion of the pre-hire portal is very similar to the alumni portal in the sense that we're helping the audience again on either side of
Hmm.
our true journey as an employee. It's been one of our recommended practices for years, I think, since we started building onboarding sites, because I think the other part of it that we always neglect is that when we think about being an employee, we have single sign-on and we can bounce right in from just a simple click. But when we're a pre-hire, to Quentin's earlier point, we don't have access through single sign-on necessarily. I'm probably going to be logging in through some form of multi-factor authentication. And again, just that level of control on the pre-hire portal is huge for that experience. Um, so I know we've talked a lot about onboarding specifically, but not all of our customers start there. So Rachel, to your question, um, are there advantages or pitfalls of starting with smaller pockets of team tasks or um, enterprise tasks? Absolutely. We see some of our customers actually start with some of those smaller leaves of absence. We've seen some of our customers actually start with offboarding
Hmm.
because they have come with the use case of saying, and I'm going to pick on one of our federal customers right now. They came to us at the time of Doge and having to take a look at building out some journeys related to voluntary retirement. That was the first journeys they were building because that was what they identified as the biggest impact in the time horizon that they had. So you don't have to start with onboarding. You can start with any of these components, and you can even start with a smaller component of onboarding that says, I'm going to manage the day 1 to day 30 experience and then further build
Hmm.
out from there. So a
No, that's a
lot of functionality.
no,
Go ahead,
that's a
Glenn.
really good point. Yes, Rachel, you don't have to start there. I've seen recently more customers starting with leave of absence. Actually, I've also seen in the healthcare space, this is a very interesting use case. I have couple of customers starting with in employee relations, where they are using employee journey management to actually manage the employee relation cases around clinicians who like from a misconduct perspective or from a like missing their shift, right? From that aspect. And so they had a whole process and it was all manual and they're using employee journeys actually to manage that process as well. So it really boils down to is like what I said earlier is like what is important to the organization? Is it a manual process? Does it go cross-departmental, right, from that aspect? And does it impact the employee experience, right? And so if you use those three questions as your filter, you start with what's most important to you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is it's a workflow engine. It is designed again to that we have some great use cases out of the box for you, but it is if you can stick a few sticky notes on a whiteboard figuratively and build out a workflow, you can probably build it within ServiceNow Employee Journey Management.
Absolutely.
And that actually leads pretty well into the next question. So, Kayla, from uh, totally understand. And every customer, especially our global customers, have variances across all of their journeys. So, couple ways of tackling. First, within the journeys themselves, it leverages our audience capabilities. That's part of the platform. So, if there's a specific task that you want to target to a specific part of the organization, a specific subset of the population, you can leverage the audience capabilities to target it just that task to that specific part of the organization. But
Also,
what I would say is a lot of organizations think about things. There's no it's an art and not a science. There's it's dependent on your level of appetite for maintenance and complexity. So, for example, one of the largest tech companies in the world uses us for leave of absence. They have 18 different leaves of absence journeys. They're each an individual lifecycle event workflow. And for them, that made the most sense because then they can federate that out to each part of the organization. When India, if something changes in India, their folks in India can just go in and tweak that lifecycle event themselves and not have any hiccups in the process. So there is some value for trying to think about overarching enterprise-wide workflows, but in reality, we do see most organizations think about it at a regional, geographic level, or even a type of business unit level. We'll have some organizations that have, a frontline worker, flavor of onboarding, and then a knowledge worker flavor of onboarding. So there's no perfect answer to it, but from a performance standpoint, like I said, 18 different leaves of absence journeys, no performance issues whatsoever. It actually worked for their business process, and they have over a 99 or a 98% satisfaction rating for those leaves of absence. So because it is personal and regionally specific, it actually allows them to focus on things like employee satisfaction.
I think, and that's a good point there, right there, Scott. I think gets overlooked from customers saying that seems to be the tipping point, right? The maintenance aspect of it. And if you have multi-locations, you may want them to have their own employee journey so they can maintain it going forward. And then the burden of maintaining it is not just centralized into one group, right? From that aspect. And also too, from a speed of it, from that perspective as well. It's like their process change for leave of absence. Once you give them the particular roles and permissions and guidelines, they can update their own journey, right? And that doesn't become a burden on like that, that central HR group to always have to manage everyone's journey. So I see that as a tipping point for a lot of our global customers as well, right? And saying, hey, I'll give them some rules and the box to operate in, give them the permissions, and let them manage their own journey.
So I know we're up on time here. And a good Natalie, I think your question is a perfect way to kind of close the conversation. So employee journey management is available to all of our HRSD enterprise customers. If you are not an HRSD enterprise customer, I would suggest reaching out to your account team because the cost itself is dependent on the number of employees and different factors. So my call to action for anyone is if you are interested, don't hesitate, pick up the phone, send a note to your ServiceNow account team or your Stridepath partners, and we'd be more than happy to have a deeper conversation about how we can start building this into your specific organization.
And then just a couple of last touches. Really powerful journey management one pager that we've put together for y'all. Feel free to grab it from the QR code on the screen or reach out and we'd be happy to send it over to you. And then, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap us up. And again, thank you everybody for joining.
Yep. Just if you want to reach out, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn with these QR codes. As I said earlier, we are here to help. So reach out to Stridepath, reach out to ServiceNow. We are your partners in this, and you don't have to go on this alone. And with that, thank you all. Really appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.